Okay, what we'll probably do in most of our classes, the first half is going to be more like a lecture, and the second half we will try to work on the Moodle platform, right? So today we had as an assigned paper the collective intelligence genome, right? You probably saw it in a different form to this. I think the link that I sent you was the link to their, what they call a working paper that was produced right before this went on slow management review, right? So if your paper doesn't look like mine, it's basically because you had the version that is available on the web. This is the version that is probably available in the paid platforms. Of course, you could get the access to this version as well using probably our periodicals copies database or any other database. But anyway, the two, it's exactly the same paper. Maybe here it's a little better desktop edited, but it's the same paper. And I chose this paper for our first class because I wanted you to have an idea of what we mean by collective intelligence, and the examples that Malone brings in this text are interesting. They are all, of course, Malone is in a business school. He's very concerned with businesses. So his examples are, except for Linux, the other examples, threadless, innocentive. What else does he mention here? Wikipedia. Well, and Wikipedia and Linux would be more like social projects, socially related projects, and threadless. YouTube. Yeah, he mentions also. Yeah, he discussed YouTube. Some of them are more business oriented, but the idea of this paper is exactly what he says, or well, they say, it's several authors, but they say in the title, the collective intelligence genome. They make a metaphor with the idea of our DNA to say that in projects involving collective intelligence, we always have a few characteristics that repeat. So I thought it was good that you had access to this paper as the first paper, because you'll see this over and over. Not only the genes appearing and reappearing all the time. Maybe there are some of the genes are not exactly. It's a metaphor, right? It's for comparison. It's for us to understand that there are building blocks that are important into building collective intelligence projects. But I think we should consider when we think about our own projects, we should think of, would people be motivated to participate? What is their motivation? For example, what is your motivation to participate in building our wiki? I promise the wiki is not for money. It's only, well, maybe there's some glory. Well, not even glory, because glory requires that you're acknowledged for it. In the wiki, you'll see that the wiki, we don't say who we are. We're just contributing anonymously. So if we think about the three main motivators, according to Malone here, money, love, or glory, I would say that you will contribute in the wiki for love, right? You'll say, well, I'm doing some good for my group, and I'm doing some good for myself. You will contribute to our forum for glory, for love and glory, and maybe some money, right? The money doesn't mean that you have to understand that money is not, I'm paying you for that, but if you have any rewards that is more pragmatic, that is more practical, that's what Malone calls money, right? So if you think, well, maybe I'll be marked at the end of the course, I'll be marked, I'll get a grade based on my interventions, there is some money there, right? That's what he would call money. I would say this will be for evaluation. It's always good to talk about evaluation the first day, because I mean, you will be great. You'll be marked somehow, and it's good to know how it's going to be. I don't intend to use even the Moodle forum participation. I don't intend to use it in a very systematic way. Of course, there will be some of you that will be causing a good impression on me and on the colleagues from the beginning, right? Because others will notice, well, here's someone who's doing an interesting reflection, and definitely that ends up being part of the assessment in a course that is assessed in somehow what I would call a qualitative, not a quantitative manner, right? What I mean by qualitative, you're taking an exam, but it's not going to be a multiple form exam. I will give you 5 blank pages, and I'll pose a few questions, very broad questions, and I will say, answer those questions with the knowledge you acquired through the discussions that we had in the course. And I will later on get all your assessments, sit on a hammock on a Friday or on a Saturday afternoon and read one after the other, trying to make a pile and saying the ones that are on top are the A's, the ones in the middle are the B's, then the C's, and then hopefully there are not going to be D's or whatever, because that would already mean that you failed. But I will try to make an assessment, say, well, this seems, let's say, a deeper construction of knowledge. This one is a little weaker, and I will do that in a way that is, let's say, I have to acknowledge some of you are also teachers or have already taught or wish to teach one day in a very imprecise way, right? The main reason for you to be here is your own learning, right? Very imprecise way. I'll try to be fair, right? I'll try to be fair. I'll say, well, this student here had a better exam than the other, but considering that the answers will all be very open answers, right? I'm not sure if I can judge that to the decimal place. I can assure you that someone who gets an A is definitely a much better work than someone who got a C, or hopefully better than someone who got a B, right? But there will be maybe exams that will be right in the middle, and it will be kicked up or down for reasons that could be considered almost random, right? But I'll try to be fair, right? But anyway, I will. My main reading is the exam, and I read the exam knowing who wrote it. So that makes a difference. It's almost like when you and why it makes a difference, because that's when the even more subjective impression that you leave during the course gets into my assessment. Have you ever seen one of those movies where there is the judge in court with people that will be taking a decision about a crime, and it's someone who's being accused of rape, and then the prosecutor says, you know, even if the evidence here is weak, do you know that this guy is also being prosecuted in 3 other situations for the same crime? And then the judge or someone says objection, and the judge says, yes, you cannot mention that because he or she has not been, usually a he, has not been has not been judged yet. So there is no, we can't assume that he's even guilty of the other. So he says, please, you're going to give your what the participants of the jury, you're going to give your opinion there. Please don't take that into account. Is it possible not to take that into account? Right? So what I'm saying is that I will be reading your exams, taking into account the impression that I already have of you, right? But it's not my intention to. What I'm saying, I'm not going to cover your names.
It's not a blind review.
It's not blind review, right? It's not going to be blind review. I'm not going to be covering the names, and I'm not going to be giving you exams in which I don't want to know who you are, right? But I think, again, I will try to be as fair as I can, and and I mean, and that's the way we're going to conduct that. But now I forgot why I'm talking about the exam. I was doing some hypertexting here, going from one thing to the other. I was supposed to remember where I had to come back to, and I know that we have to talk about this.
Motivation.
Thank you very much, Magalhães. Yeah, we were talking about motivation. So there is always, even in participating in the forum, there is some money motivation, right? Participating there with good analysis will probably provide me also with provide me and your colleagues with some incentive, some what this author calls money incentives. I like these three motivator aspects that are provided by Malone. You see some of us in our research group have been very concerned with motivation lately. We are very curious about what makes people take part in crowdfunding, what makes people take part and spend their time in projects that involve collective intelligence. And we always try to expand this. We tend to think that it's simplistic to think of love, money, and glory. We say, well, there's love for oneself, there's love for the others. So there's altruism, and there is love for. There's a love that is more almost like glory. It's a little blurred, but at the same time, it's efficient to think about these three things. We have come up in some cases even with 16 different motivators, but we can, if we really try to reorganize them, we will end up with 3 or 4, right? If I were to rewrite his paper, maybe I would have 4, because I would possibly try and separate love in love for a cause, and love for the people. Love, I think, could be money is very clear to me, and I don't think that we need to. There's a lot of things that you can put in that basket, but basically it's pragmatic benefit. You are going to get something at the end that is that could convert into money, or could convert into some other kind of very practical benefit. And there are other things that we do for other motivators. If we think in the past, during the whole Industrial Revolution, we've had a lot of emphasis on money. Right? Most of the organizations that we've built since the Industrial Revolution, at least, are based on convincing people to do what we want by means of paying them for that, paying them for their time, paying them for their results, but anyway, paying them. Okay, we are at the, let's say, probably at a moment in which we are in an edge between this traditional Industrial Revolution and some other knowledge revolution, information revolution, or whatever. We're right there trying to jump from one to the other, and I believe that this next revolution, which we're sort of starting or in the middle of, will probably provide people with, will need to provide people with love and glory more than money in order to get people's commitment, right? Money is still going to be required for our most basic needs, but after we have those basic needs already met, we will probably require little. I see mainly in the generation of my kids that, differently to my generation where we were very career focused, they want to enjoy life. Maybe I have spoiled my kids, but I see that happening to other kids as well. And they're doing that in a clever way, because they're not saying, they're not absolutely inconsequent. They say, well, I will work, but I will work just enough for me to be able to, to have my food and have whatever needs. But they don't want they don't see reasons to overdo with respect to work. Right? I don't know exactly what was the change from one generation to the other. Maybe one of them was that they looked at their parents and saw that their parents just worked too much in many cases, right? Well, hopefully, I hope that my kids don't think that I work too much and don't give them enough attention. But I have to acknowledge that I could have given them more attention and then a little less of things that I value and they don't value, right? So these are the guys that the companies will have to hire in the future, either directly by actually having them as employees, or indirectly by involving them in networks that will work partially sometime. Okay, I'll work for this company, for this project, and then I'll go to the beach, right, or whatever. But they will have to find other ways of getting them engaged. It's not going to be for money. I think this is an improvement. I'm not sure, but at least I think that this has happened to a large extent. There are much less people in the younger generations who wish to become the Bill Gates or the Zuckerbergs or of the future, mainly if that will involve a lot of work. And I can say that even in cases where people are really lucky and really clever and everything, a lot of work is required. A lot of work is required to do what these guys did and still is. They may be the richest and the people with more power to control other people, but this next generation looks at them and say, but they are controlled by the system. They are more slaves than of the system than even their employees, right? So we'll have, if we want to engage people, it's going to be probably much more for love and glory, and those things in the social networks that we have today. And I shouldn't call it collective intelligence and social networks, but I should call it collective intelligence and networks in general, because it's it's not necessary. Even those networks that I've already mentioned, Facebook and mainly what we usually call as social networks, they're really not our social networks, because we don't interact with those people in a social way. We're connected to them somehow. We know about their existence, they know about our existence, but the connection is much more like we have links to them that can and will be used in different moments for different objectives, right? Yeah, one thing to remember here is the three motivators. You read a lot of other papers talking about motivation, and you will probably most of the times notice that they can be summarized as these three. Okay, and then he starts talking about the genes. There are genes for creation, genes for decision making. In fact, I was planning on discussing the paper in more thorough detail or lecturing about the paper, but then I thought I have already done that in the previous years. And if you look, for example, there in the YouTube platform where we have the papers, you see that there a class, which I'll find it here somewhere. There is a class there for Malone et al. 2010, right? Which I rewatched today at 5 o'clock in the morning, just to make sure that I wish to recommend it to you, because many of the times we had some technical problems. This worked fine. This is a good, if you want to check my main ideas about Malone et al., just refer to this. Just check this later. This YouTube presentation here, Malone et al. 2010, from I thought it was. It says here 1 year ago, but I thought it was 2 years ago. I thought it was in 2016. Anyway, it's there. You can check it later. What I wanted to do now is, instead of keep lecturing, go to our Moodle platform. And I'm sort of lost here. Let me see if this is what I have there. Gee, this is all. Go to. Let me switch role here to students so that you see what I'm seeing here. I included here a paper discussion forum, right? If you click on paper discussion forum, we already have Malone et al. There. And what we will do is, and it's open there, there's no questions so far. I haven't asked anything, you haven't asked anything because I just did that. You can reply to this, just to this entry of mine, Malone. If you just go there and answer to it, you reply, you can include a question of your own or a remark. Maybe we could each think of the thing that impressed us the most about the paper, or something that impressed us, even something that we think that impressed us and we don't think that the others would have noticed. I don't know, each one of us brings his or her own history into reading a paper. I tend to say that we are always authors of our own reading, right? When we read, the author wanted us to interpret that as something. We get the information from the author, but to make sense of it, we bring it together with other ideas that we already have in our minds. And I think that's where we can grow as a collective, is what impressed me in this text, eventually based on things that have already occurred to me before. Let's be a little personal in maybe writing a first remark below this entry here, Malone et al. 2010. Just click there as if you were going to answer. It's not a question. And say something that you thought was interesting and you agree, weird and you don't agree, whatever, as your first impression. And then as a second step, we will react to those impressions of yours, so everyone else is going to see what you wrote, and then we'll be able to see what each one of you wrote. We're going to be able to interact with that. Okay. I will close the broadcasting here so that we can work on that. And if there are people that are working from a distance, they can also get there to the Moodle forum and first expose their ideas and then try to interact with the other colleagues' ideas. But anyway, we'll stop streaming here and we'll be working on that for the remaining of the class, including our ideas and then interacting with our colleagues' ideas. Again, for those of you whose English is not, it's the first class. By the end of the course, you'll be all, if you have any troubles, just remember Google Translator can help you eventually bring good ideas that only come to your mind in Portuguese or Spanish or whatever. I think we do have someone watching us from Mexico. I'm not sure, I haven't. Just so that everyone can interact with that a little later. Okay, so I'm stopping streaming now, and let's work on that.